Hayden Panettiere died on August 16, 2026, just days before her 37th birthday. And the news broke so fast that most fans learned about it from the same handful of words her own father used to describe her. He called her an incredible light and a force of nature. Behind that short statement sits a much bigger story, one involving a fortune worth anywhere from $6 to $15 million, a daughter growing up an ocean away, and a family already worn down by grief. So what exactly does Hayden Panettiere leave behind? Let's find out. The latest on her death and the questions still unanswered in the news landed on a Sunday evening. Her representative confirmed to ABC News that Panettiere had died at 36, and her father, Skip Panettiere, released a brief statement calling her an incredible light and a force of nature who brought immeasurable love and joy to everyone who knew her, both personally and to the millions who watched her on screen. He closed by asking for privacy while the family processes what he called an unimaginable loss, a request echoed almost word for word across nearly every major outlet that picked up the story that night. The timing hit particularly hard for anyone who had followed her closely over the past few months. She had spent much of the spring on a genuine press tour, appearing on podcasts and daytime shows to promote her memoir, sounding by most accounts more settled and self-assured than she had in years. That contrast, a woman who seemed to finally be on solid footing dying so suddenly just weeks later, is part why the story spread so fast across platforms that rarely cover the same celebrity news at the same speed. The circumstances remain genuinely unclear. Panettiere and her on-again, off-again boyfriend, actor Brian Hickerson, had reportedly flown from Los Angeles to the southern United States a Saturday before she died, and law enforcement in Greenville, South Carolina, confirmed they had responded to an incident and opened a preliminary investigation. Officials there stated that early findings showed no signs of foul play or suspicious circumstances, though the cause and manner of death had not been made public as this video was being put together. Her publicist, Casey Kitchen, told reporters simply that there was an investigation ongoing, a phrase that has since been repeated across dozens of headlines without much more detail attached to it. There is a strange, quiet detail buried in older court records that connects directly to that South Carolina trip. Back in 2018, shortly after Panettiere and Hickerson started dating, police were called to a home in South Carolina belonging to Hickerson's father following a drunken altercation between the two men, with Panettiere reportedly the one who opened the door for responding officers. That same state, years later, is where the final chapter of her life unfolded, a coincidence that has not been widely reported but adds an unsettling layer to an already painful story for anyone tracking the couple's history closely. Tributes arrived almost immediately once the news spread. Viola Davis, who starred opposite Panettiere in the 2016 film Custody, wrote in a post that she wished the world had more time with her and described watching a beautiful phoenix rising from the ashes, adding that Panettiere's test had become her testimony. Coverage from NBC News noted that co-stars from Bring It On, Heroes and Nashville posted similar messages that same night, several of them describing a warmth in private that rarely came through in her public interviews. A handful of former Nashville crew members specifically mentioned her habit of remembering the names and family details of everyone on set, down to camera operators and background performers, a small detail that resurfaced repeatedly in the hours after her death was confirmed. To understand why so many people across so many different corners of pop culture felt that loss so personally, it helps to go back to the very beginning, long before Claire Bennett or Juliet Barnes ever existed, back to a baby being booked for her first commercial before she could even crawl. A career that started before she could walk. Hayden Leslie Panettiere was born on August 21st, 1989, in Palisades, New York, to Leslie Vogel, a former soap actress who later managed her daughter's early career, and Alan Skip Panettiere, a fire captain. She appeared in her first commercial at 11 months old, and by age, for she had landed a recurring role on the ABC soap opera One Life to Live. 2 years later, she moved to Guiding Light, where her character storyline battling leukemia earned the young actress a special honor from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, a detail that rarely makes it into modern tributes but shaped how early audiences first connected with her. She voiced Princess in Pixar's A Bug's Life, played Cheryl Yost opposite Denzel Washington in Remember the Titans, and spent her early teenage years bouncing between family films like Ice Princess and Raising Helen. None of it fully prepared audiences for 2006, when a 15-year-old cheerleader who could heal from any wound turned her into a household name almost overnight. Claire Bennett on NBC's Heroes kept her on primetime television for 4 seasons, and the healing cheerleader storyline became so central to the show's marketing that Panettiere's face ended up on more Heroes merchandise than any other cast members, including the actors playing the show's title characters. When the show ended in 2010, she landed the role of Juliet Barnes, the ruthless, talented country star, on the ABC musical drama Nashville, earning 2 Golden Globe nominations across a 6-season run that made her one of the most recognizable faces in Music City. Longtime fans of the show have pointed out for years that Juliet Barnes was widely rumored to be loosely inspired by real country artists of the era. Speculation Panettiere pushed back on directly more than once, insisting the character was not modeled after any single performer despite the constant online comparisons. She later played Kirby Reed in Scream 4 and reprised a role in Scream 6, narrated audiobooks, voiced Kyrie across the Kingdom Hearts video game franchise, a role that introduced her to an entirely different generation of fans who never watched a single episode of Heroes, and lent her voice to Kate in Alpha and Omega. Her final credited role came earlier this year in the direct-to-video thriller Sleepwalker, a quiet ending to a career that stretched across more than 3 decades and touched nearly every format the entertainment industry had to offer, from daytime soap operas to network prestige drama to horror franchises to animated video games. Her formal education ended with private tutors starting in 9th grade, a common arrangement for young performers, but one that left her without many of the traditional milestones her peers experienced. After attending South Orangetown Middle School, she left the traditional classroom entirely, and she has said in past interviews that she once considered stepping away from acting for a period to pursue higher education before Heroes made that plan impossible. Her family also has Italian roots along with some English and German ancestry, a background she referenced occasionally in interviews when asked about her surname, which translates roughly to Baker in Italian, and is commonly mispronounced by fans who never quite land on the correct 4-syllable rhythm. There is another side of Panettiere almost entirely missing from the current wave of tribute coverage, one that had nothing to do with acting at all, and says a great deal about who she was before fame ever settled into a routine. The fortune, the activism, and the fight she chose to wage, reports gathered after her death place her net worth anywhere between $6 million and roughly $15 million, a gap wide enough to say something about how unreliable celebrity wealth estimates really are once you move past a single headline salary figure. A breakdown of her finances published earlier this year traced the bulk of that fortune back to Nashville, where she reportedly earned around $75,000 per episode across the show's 124-episode run, working out close to $9.3 million from that role alone. Heroes reportedly added close to $2 million more, and Scream 4 brought an additional $1 million. Figures that do not even count her music career, her voice acting work, or years spent as a face of brands, including Neutrogena, Candies, Kohl's, and Dooney & Burke, for whom she once designed a limited edition Caskin handbag in 2008. Real estate tells its own small story inside the bigger one. She bought a Hollywood Hills home in 2008 for roughly $2.6 million and sold it in 2014 for just over $3 million. She later sold a Nashville property in October 2018 for $1.65 million, right around the same stretch her personal life was unraveling behind the scenes, a timing overlap that likely explains why estimates of her final estate vary so widely between $6 million and $15 million, depending on which aggregator you trust. Long before any of that financial picture took shape, though, an 18-year-old Panettiere was already spending her leverage on something far riskier than a brand deal. In October 2007, as the official spokesperson for the Whaleman Foundation's Save the Whales Again campaign, she joined Sea Shepherd activists paddling on surfboards into a cove in Taiji, Japan, attempting to disrupt the town's annual dolphin hunt. Fishermen shoved the activists with poles and forced them back to shore, and the confrontation was later captured in the cove, the documentary that went on to win the Oscar for Best Documentary Feature. Weeks later, reports surfaced that Japan had issued an arrest warrant against her for interfering with the hunt, a claim she addressed publicly, telling reporters she had just learned about it and doubted anything serious would come of it, and one the Japanese Fisheries Agency later disputed entirely. That November, PETA awarded her a Compassion in Action Award for the trip. She returned to Taiji in 2010, this time alongside Klitschko, attempting unsuccessfully to meet with the town's mayor and local fisheries officials, who refused to open a union hall door despite having been inside minutes earlier. A retrospective on her activism published in the hours after her death described the Taiji protest as the boldest role of her career, one that happened entirely off camera. That activist streak ran deeper than a single trip. She delivered protest letters to both the Norwegian and Japanese ambassadors calling for an end to commercial whaling, defended traditional Aboriginal whaling practices as distinct from commercial hunting at a 2007 Greenpeace event in Alaska, became a vegetarian, and joined the celebrity board of Ronald McDonald House Charities that same year. A profile of her charitable work from around that period noted that she also auctioned off a private dinner and a whale watching trip with herself to raise money for ocean conservation causes. She reportedly carried a small tattoo reading a phrase intended to mean live without regrets in Italian, though the word was famously misspelled, a detail longtime fans have brought up repeatedly in tribute threads over the past day as a strangely fitting footnote to a life that never seemed to slow down for anyone's comfort, including her own. Money and activism both explain a version of who she was in public. What actually shaped her in private, though, unfolded across the following decade, largely away from cameras until she chose to speak about it herself. Love, loss, and the private battles now coming into focus. Panettiere's most consequential relationship began in 2009 with Ukrainian heavyweight boxing champion Vladimir Klitschko, whom she met at a launch party for a photography book they had both been featured in. The couple broke up and reconciled more than once before getting engaged in October 2013. In December 2014, she gave birth to their daughter, Kaya Evdokia Klitschko, in Hawaii. Not long after her split from Klitschko, Panettiere began dating Brian Hickerson, a relationship marked by a documented pattern of legal trouble that stretched across nearly 2 years. He was first arrested in May 2019 for alleged felony domestic violence, booked in the early hours of the morning and released the next afternoon on $50,000 bond, a case that was dismissed months later after the couple reportedly reconciled. He was arrested again in February 2020 in Wyoming, accused of punching her in the face on Valentine's Day, and pleaded not guilty to domestic battery that April. By July 2020, he faced 8 separate charges stemming from their relationship, including for a felony count of injuring a spouse or girlfriend, 1 misdemeanor battery count, 2 felony counts of assault with a deadly weapon, and 1 felony count of dissuading a witness from prosecuting a crime. Panettiere spoke publicly about the case that same July, writing on social media that she was coming forward with the truth in the hope that her story would empower others in abusive relationships to get the help they deserved, and that she was prepared to do her part to make sure the man never hurt anyone again. A breakdown of the criminal case reported by Fox News noted that her attorney said she had suffered years of psychological, emotional, and severe physical abuse before finding the courage to see the case through. Hickerson ultimately pleaded no contest to 2 felony counts in 2021, receiving 45 days in county jail, for years of probation, 52 mandatory domestic violence classes, $500 in restitution, and a 5-year protective order barring him from any contact with her. The two later reconciled anyway, and reports place them together again in the days leading up to her death this month. Grief compounded these struggles in ways few outside her family fully understood. In February 2023, her younger brother Jansen Panettiere, also an actor known for films including The Perfect Game and The Martial Arts Kid, died suddenly at 28 from complications tied to an undiagnosed enlarged heart and aortic valve issues. She wrote about that loss in her memoir and spoke about carrying a guilt that never fully lifted, telling an interviewer 3 years later that losing him felt like losing half of herself, and the 2 siblings had remained close throughout their adult lives despite growing up almost entirely inside the entertainment industry. In May 2026, Panettiere released that memoir, This Is Me, a reckoning through Grand Central Publishing. Her publisher described it as an intimate look behind closed doors, covering postpartum depression, addiction and recovery, trauma, domestic abuse, and her brother's death in unflinching detail. Fans lined up outside a Manhattan bookstore for the signing that month, many drawn less by nostalgia for Heroes or Nashville and more by a need to hear someone famous describe struggles they recognized in their own lives. What she leaves behind, in the end, is difficult to reduce to a single figure: There's an estate somewhere between $6 and $15 million, depending on which valuation you trust. A body of work spanning more than 3 decades and dozens of film and television credits. A daughter who will grow up hearing her mother's own words rather than secondhand tabloid summaries. And a family already worn down by grief long before this latest loss arrived. She is survived by her daughter Kaya, her mother Leslie Vogel, and her father Skip Panettiere. The same family that buried her younger brother just 3 years earlier, and that is now, once again, asking the public that watched her entire life unfold on screen for the one thing fame rarely grants, a little bit of privacy to grieve. There's also a version of her legacy that has nothing to do with money at all. One built on a teenager who paddled into a Japanese cove because she believed it mattered, a mother who made an agonizing custody decision because she believed it was best for her daughter, and a woman who spent the final months of her life writing down every hard chapter of her own story, so that someone else struggling with the same things might feel less alone. Whatever the investigation in South Carolina eventually determines, that part which she leaves behind is already permanent, printed in her own words, in a book that will keep being read long after this week's headlines fade. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen. There are no more lines remaining from the text you provided. Part 3 contains a final section, ending with this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.